Okay.
They should have set the poet. The poet. They should have set the poet. The poet.
Sending poets. This is Sending Poets, a podcast we named after the movie Contact, when Jodie Foster says they should have sent a poet after traveling through the wormhole. My name is John, with me is Bob and Tucker, and today we're going to talk about a few articles that we came across recently about evolution and free will. So, right in our wheelhouse here, things we like to talk about. So, good morning, you guys.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Being here.
Hey, I gotta throw something at you, John.
Yeah.
That intro. It
Mhm.
just struck me. The vibe is Techno Viking. You remember that YouTube clip, that viral? You know what I'm talking about, Techno Viking?
I don't know if I know, but the term
wish
sounds
you
kind of
did.
familiar.
Oh, it's such
I'm
a
gonna have to
it's
like
such an
Google it real quick.
it's such an iconic internet meme. It's one of the great internet memes of all time. You gotta watch it and all the rest.
Oh, yes. I just pulled it up, and yes, I do remember that from
Dude, from forever, man. This thing's been around forever.
Yeah.
It's like a 20-year thing. I can't remember. It's so. But anyway, as I
says
walk,
from 2000, from the fuck parade in Berlin, Germany.
Exactly.
It's called.
Yeah, Germany.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude, it was such a great. Because I'm sitting here vibing and I'm hearing the thing and I'm walking, but I'm walking in the beat of the guy, the Techno Viking, like has he
Yeah.
done this little anyway, I'll digress.
Excellent.
And I'll relinquish here. And I apologize, everybody.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for the trip down memory lane. I totally forgot about that. When we're done here, I'm gonna watch that video again.
You got to.
Yeah. Well, sweet. Okay, so this first article, it was I can't, an algorithm in an email or something, or a Google card or something threw it at me. But it was about this idea, this new evolutionary law. It was on Cornell's website, and it's talking about like postulating a law of increasing functional information, which states that a system will evolve if many different configurations of the system undergo selection for one or more functions. And to me, that meant like, as opposed to survival, like the survival instinct or purpose for evolution. Like, I kind of think that's kind of been the standard this whole time, is like that's kind of the base reason for evolution, is like survival. And so this new law, this kind of what I'm gathering from it, is like maybe there's more than just survival and like functional things, like beyond just survival. So we'll just start there. Like I pulled out something else in the article, but before I read what that is, what did you guys make of that? Any thoughts one way or the other?
I think it's interesting in a couple ways, because they're almost, to me, postulating that there's a function of evolution that is not necessarily caused by life, but that arises naturally due to mechanical processes such as gravity. And it kind of reminded me of me and Jerry sitting in the garage back in the day, and I remember saying to him, to me, gravity is God. Gravity is what causes everything. in some way. And I think this article kind of touches on that, where it's like, if you take enough random stuff and smush it together, you're eventually going to get some sort of new order out of that. It will rearrange itself in a way where the two components are no longer separate, but they have created something new.
That's so interesting you mentioned gravity, because one of the things that's not in our agenda, but it was this week, Bob, I think you sent the link to that article in Forbes with the interview with Roger Penrose. And I
Yes.
didn't read all the article, but I watched the video. And
Yeah, that one gets deep.
yeah, well, because he's saying, like, the sort of, quantum mechanic thing about two particles or whatever being like in two states at the same time, and the thing that makes it one instead of two is the collapse of the wave function. And I think Schrodinger is one of the first people that had the theory about, like, it's the conscious observation that causes the wave function to collapse. And Roger Penrose is kind of like, no, that doesn't make as much. He thinks it's gravity that makes the wave function collapse. If I'm kind of like understanding it right, and that was really fucking mind blowing to me.
Historically, Schrodinger, I believe, originated with the historic cat, right? The Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah,
it was
right.
as a joke, as a way to put down the reality of the thing, but it was adopted as essentially the ideal version of the thing, meaning it became the mimetic form of this quantum state of superposition of both alive and dead at the same time. Not to disagree with what you're saying. I'm just saying I think Schrodinger originally made that up as a lark, but everybody picked it up. Yeah, no shit. But it is used as a real example. I like the one that they used in the article and perhaps the video, where imagine you're skiing down a hill and there's a tree. Like, you got to go right or you got to go left at some point. You can't go both at the same time. You're going to hit the tree. So reality is the inducement of going right or left at this point of superposition. And so one of the concepts is gravity is the thing, is the tree, right? You got to pick. Some other people say it's the conscious observer.
Yeah.
In the two-slit experiment, I'm not sure if you gentlemen are familiar with this. This is
sure.
where it gets really interesting, because what my model is based on a two-slit experiment, meaning it's not the conscious observer, but there has to be a detection event. It has to be an absorption of signal. So this conscious observer thing, I think, it's silliness, honestly. What it takes is an observer of detecting the waveform. So imagine you're passing a waveform through a two-slit. So really simply, I've seen this done on YouTube. Instead of making two slits, they just took like a hair or one little tiny little division, just so that you had to go left or right, like the tree and the skiing, metaphor. And so you just put one little divider, in between like a laser, and you'll get this phenomenon where you'll get the waveform pattern on the detection device or the wall. So it'll end up having a form of like a refraction form, where it'll make these bands, right? Instead of it just being one line on one side, one line on the other side, it makes this banded pattern. So it's a wave. But what I'm saying is, if you were to detect which side like one photon at a time, if you were to detect which side it goes on, it loses that superposition phenomenon. It begins to become a particle, and you will see it as one line on one side and one line on the other side. So it's the detection of one signal. Now, it doesn't block the signal. Here's the magic part. This is like back to Tucker, and he said this a couple episodes ago about dimensionality. So imagine this. Imagine you have two waves simultaneously. One's going, say, up and down on height and along length, and the other one's going left and right on width and along length. And so imagine your detection is a function of pulling one of those waves off to detect which side it went on. And at that point, you're left with just up and down and length. So imagine, if you know electromagnetism, you would have two waveforms superpositioned on each other. but at perpendicular angles, if you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
one wave is going up and down along length, and the other goes left and right along width, but along length as well. And so, that's electromagnetism. You have electric along, one dimension, and then you have magnetism along the other dimension. Anyway, the point is, when you absorb one of those signals and quote unquote see the thing, then it locks it into a real state. So does that make sense? As opposed to actually seeing, like everybody says conscious observer. I don't think it's a conscious observer, it's detection. So if you can detect what side it went off of, then you're pulling a little bit of information off of the signal, and you're reducing it from a superposition to standard, essentially, a two-dimensional waveform is what I'm saying. So it's two-dimensional at that point.
And
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, for me, I've always kind of had an issue with the conscious observer, because to me it's not the consciousness that's changing it, it's the interacting with the signal in some
Correct.
way, and that
Exactly.
can be done by non-conscious means. It's just our eyes absorbing the photons or our ears absorbing the sound wave. It's not a function of consciousness.
And that's the Schrodinger's cat thing, is that it's not a conscious observer. It's a random event inside the box that occurs, and the cat is either alive or dead. You don't know till you open it, but the cat is definitely alive or dead based on, whether the atomic nuclide decatur or whatever, and some detection device, breaks a cyanide vessel or something. I mean, that was his
yeah,
experiment. It's like some
right.
random thing. And now when you open it, you see a dead cat or you see a live cat. I mean, you'll see that thing, but I don't think anybody believes that when you open it, this is the weird thing, this is the quantum effect. Like, that's the moment the cat dies. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody believes that.
Well, so yeah, because doesn't that beg the question or whatever? Like, if there's no detection, is that what they're saying? Like, if there's no detection, conscious observer
Mathematically,
or otherwise, like, then are they saying like that's
it's a
when both
it's
of the states
probabilistic.
exist, or
Exactly, it's probabilistic. So there is a way to do, math based on the fact that it's not one or the other. There is a way. So you can have quantum entanglements, and then you can do math based on maintaining a quantumly entangled state and keep on playing with the probabilities, meaning nothing's, no collapse of the wave function. As long as you maintain this in a waveform state, you can interact it and do quantum computing. Essentially, it's like quantum computing. It's very cool stuff, but you have to maintain that quantum state. You cannot allow the waveform to collapse, because then you ruin the probabilistic nature of the mathematics.
And,
and
and
then
I also think, like, where people get the wrong idea with the conscious observer part is, you take the cat in the box. Well, the box is an observer. The air surrounding the cat is an observer, because it's interacting on a molecular level with that cat.
mm,
So, you know, yeah, you open the box, the cat's dead. That waveform didn't collapse the second you opened the box. That waveform collapsed the second the cat died and was observed by the environment.
Exactly. Yeah.
dude,
Exactly.
that reminds me of this book called Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, and it's this company. I don't think it's just like a single guy that makes this box, this like um, complete like isolation type of box where there is again, this is sci-fi, so suspend your disbelief or whatever. but the idea is that there's this box where there is absolutely nothing in it. There is no there's no, like Tucker, you're saying, the air is like a
It's a
observer,
perfect
right?
vacuum. It's a perfect vacuum, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And but it still exists in a way that a person can go inside it, and when they're in it, it's like it's described as like this hallway of doors, the kind of the trope of a
Mirrors
multiverse
reflecting
kind of
mirrors, or
thing.
something like that, or
Well, it's like, yeah, and yeah, because it goes on for infinity, and it is like you can walk one way or the other and choose a door, and then you're in this other reality, like a multiverse kind of a thing. But it all, you know, it's I wouldn't say it's quite at the level like Dan Brown or Andy Weir where the science is kind of written so well that it seems believable, but it's pretty
Mm.
close. It's pretty close because he's mentioned Schrodinger and like you know, the whole thing that like it works because this box is able to like eliminate everything from it. So anyway, that just the way you're describing that, Tucker, reminded me of that book. It's a pretty good one. I would recommend it. But so going back to the Forbes article and the Penrose video, like I mean the video with the interview with Penrose, he was talking about, you know, he kept going back and forth between classical mechanics and quantum mechanics. And another part that was really crazy to me that I just don't know if I could wrap my head around it, but so he was talking about things going like back in time, you know, like backwards to, I guess, satisfy the classical mechanic understanding of things. So when you have the two states and the waveform collapses, it's like it goes back in time so that like that second possibility never existed or something like that. I'm probably not explaining it
Yeah,
very well, but it
no,
was something very trippy like that.
I'm not quite familiar with exactly what he was saying. I think he's trying to solve a very hard problem, you know, and this is one of the workarounds would be, you know, in physics, I don't think there is a proof of the directionality of time. So it's one of the variables you could theoretically play around with. And I think he's utilizing that here to solve a problem, you know, which is many worlds theory, essentially, right? You have all these potential outcomes, and what happens to them when you collapse the waveform? Like, where is the reality here, right? Where is the reality? So he's putting reality in a time game, you know, allowing many paths to be explored probabilistically, but then once the real one happens, it like goes back. So I don't know, we've talked about this many times, John. I don't know if it's been on the recorded part about playing the maze game backwards. You know
Yeah,
how?
right.
Okay, so this is backward induction, and it's you know, game theory, and it's the way these probabilistic games work. You know, you can figure out the pathway best by solving it going backwards. And so I think he's utilizing these techniques to somehow, and I'm not trying to disparage Sir Roger Penrose, by the way. He's
Yeah,
my all
right.
time champion, by the way. Just so everybody on the record, he's my guy. Okay. Um,
Plus, if it wasn't for him, like you and I probably wouldn't have met. Like, I don't know if we've
Thank you,
ever
sir.
explained that, but yeah,
No, one
there's a
day
little bit of that. No, that's pretty cool.
we'll tell the origin story. It blows somebody's
Yeah, yeah,
mind someday. But
right.
here's what I would like to tangent off on, unless Tucker wants to talk about the actual theory, because I think it's way out there, and I personally don't understand it enough to.
Well, yeah, and it was, you know, I watched that video last night, and it's a lot to even try to digest in one go. It's almost one where
Yeah,
you need to watch 15 minutes and then spend an hour looking stuff up. But
right. Yeah.
um, the takeaway that I have from that one, where I kind of disagree, actually comes from this weird little fantasy series that I've been listening to. And the guy was talking about traveling backwards in time. And he goes, you can't go back and alter anything because the universe has already spent 14.3 billion years to make that event happen. The amount of energy that went and that goes into every single event that happens at all times is a product of the universe having evolved for as long as it has. And you can't undo that energy. It's too much.
Mm,
And
interesting.
I mean, it's like I said, it just came from a fantasy novel that really
So I
doesn't
think
even deal with
I
time travel, but they had that blurb in there, and I was like, I do like
Mm,
that. That
I
makes
I
yeah.
sense on
I
some
think the
level.
wedge here is between the quantum realm, where I think time is breaking down, and this, you know, the standard uh, cosmological time, you know, Einstein's relativity, etc. That really works. Like, we can predict that. It's at the quantum level, I think, is when everything gets wonky, and you can go backwards. Apparently, this is the point of Penrose's thing. Just to put a little point on it, I think that's the differentials between the big things and the little things. And at little scale, it seems like these things are more likely to be occurring, or at least potentially able to occur. But here's what I want to throw into the mix real quick, if you guys want to hear it.
Yeah.
Is that what's so interesting to me is, without going into the backstory of who Penrose is and why John and I met and all the rest, but it's guys like him, physicists and mathematicians, who invariably get into consciousness. And it's a really weird thing. And what I'm trying to back into is how it feels to be these guys. And here's what I mean. Or ladies, of course.
Mm-hmm.
How it feels to be someone who is synthetic, in that they are creating really groundbreaking ideas. Okay. And I believe new ideas anyway, are the most valuable resource in the universe. It's like a giant video game, and as you unlock a skill, like, as long as you don't lose it, that idea passes around infinitely, and it's powerful. I mean, you build on these things, and this goes back to this original, like, accretion of complexity concepts, right? You have to build on these ideas. So here's my point. These people who are these groundbreaking idea people, they almost always search for, how was I able to do this? How am I creating these ideas? How am I solving these problems? How am I doing these things? Because they invariably figure out it's not a conscious endeavor. And there's something there. There's something on this synthetic side, not on the analytic side. Like, we're very conscious on the analytic side. We understand what's happening. We can document these things. We can abstract them into writing or into speech or into whatever, and maintain them for all other people and share them external to our own consciousness, etc.
Yeah.
I'm
Into
talking
stories,
into
movies,
stories,
books,
precisely.
yeah.
Many,
But yeah,
many,
go ahead.
many ways. But the idea of feeling a certain kind of way when the light bulb goes off, and realizing they didn't do that. It happened to them. Now, I'm not saying they weren't the one who did it, obviously. I'm just saying the part that is of them, that is that creative side, is hidden. It's not something that you can just consciously trigger an action of. It has to be coaxed out and conversated with and observed. Okay,
Yeah.
as the observing consciousness, we are observing something, which is the subconscious synthetic component of emergence. It's telling us this is the thing. So anyway, my point is, these mathematicians, they have to find out, how is this working? And so you get up with a guy like Penrose,
Yeah.
who's got a Nobel Prize. He's a mathematician, all his Penrose tilings. He's, just a certified genius, and he cannot let go of this one thing, which is, consciousness, and where's the root of this thing? And so that's what I'd like to hear everybody's thoughts on. Why is it that this certain type of person seems to be drawn to this question of consciousness versus whatever else it could be?
Dude, I feel like it's like the perfect, like, tie in back to the article, like the piece that I wrote, that I pulled out here. Let me just read this. By the way, like, isn't it, I think it's so interesting how, like, a single word can just, spark all of these other directions.
Yes.
Kim and I call those, like, side carrots. Like, Tucker said the word gravity, and I was like, oh, dude, and I love it. And then we just kind of close the loop and come back into this. So this article, it said 3 kinds of functions occur in nature. The most basic function is stability. Stable arrangements of atoms or molecules are selected to continue. Almost wonder if that's, like, similar to the survival thing. But also chosen to persist are dynamic systems with ongoing supplies of energy. But the third and most interesting function, according to the research, is novelty, the tendency of evolving systems to explore new configurations that sometimes lead to startling new behaviors or characteristics, like photosynthesis. And I think that's my answer to your question, Bob. Like, why is Penrose, thinking about these things? I think it's evolution, man. Like, I think it's just part of, like, the novelty seeking thing. Like, what's some new way to explain or think about what the reality is like right now, where these tiny things spinning on this huge, ball rotating in space, fly, orbiting around the sun. You know what I mean? Like it's and trying to like make sense of that. I think that's got to be part of it. I mean, that's my answer. It's just baked in that we that humans want to find new, you know, to
Well,
boldly go where no one's gone before kind
can
of
I
thing, you
can I
know.
ask you though? Maybe it's more apparent to some than to others. Meaning, if you're sitting in the audience and there's a projectionist, and the projectionist is displaying, one frame for 24 of a
Hmm.
separate signal, like not everybody sitting in that audience may see that thing. Like maybe it's only a few that can, have the perceptive capability, the frame rate, to even see that the thing is there. And that's kind of what I'm saying. It is a universal process. It's a great mystery. But why is it that physicists and mathematicians like are obsessed with this thing? Novelty, they're trying to solve problems. I think that's a great theory. They're problem solving people. Uh, I guess I'm more towards, they are glimpsing the real creative moment. And artists, maybe, artists are doing these things in their
Yeah.
compositions as well, and embedding their explanation in their metaphors.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to rein this in a little because my mind's gone about four different directions in the
Yeah.
last couple minutes with it. But so I think there's something beyond consciousness that drives that, and I think to me it's apparent there is some sort of memory that's passed on to offspring on an
Mm.
unconscious level. So, we can call it instinct. We can call it, I don't know if you want
Intuition,
to
you
say
know,
that
whatever.
DNA has its own memory and, what the parent experienced is somehow passed on in some degree.
Hmm.
But I think it's much more on a small scale with a lot of this stuff in how people interpret it, right? So you just happen to have the right configuration of cells to see things in that mathematical perspective that leads you there. But I think it leads with any sort of consciousness. Once you get to a certain level, you keep asking the questions. Well, what is that? How does that work? What is this? And then you finally get down to, well, what am I?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you go, oh shit, like I don't understand that at all. Like I've built all these patterns and to understand everything around me, but when I turn that around and try to understand what's within, you get to those conversations like the video with Penrose where it's like he's he's still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Like as smart as he
Yeah.
is, as educated as he is, once you turn that focus from the outside to the inside, you
Mhm.
go, man, that's a whole other universe with a different set of laws.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's very like just trippy and um just I think where I'm at in my life is just the effort of contemplating it is so rewarding to me, you know? Like I I I just feel like I have many moments of just like you know, it actually it's a word I learned from the book Contact. New shit, is it Newmanism? I think it's like anyway, it's I when we do the Contact episode, I know I highlighted it. We'll dig into it more, but it's a word that um means that feeling of total awe in in recognizing something like as wholly other, you know, than you know, uh, I want to just say like again back to the novelty thing. Like this is something like brand new, you know, that a person like hadn't considered before, and just being like speechless in that moment of awe. I think the
See,
word is
that's that.
numinism.
That's what I'm talking about. The concept of the duality. If you're in awe, you're not the creator of the thing. And so that's what I'm getting at. There's a creative side and an observer judgmental side. And so this is internal, and the conversation happens so that you do have these awe moments. And I think it's an evolutionary thing. I don't think you can have quote unquote intelligence, like understanding, not corollary, not knowledge. I'm talking causation. Like you understand what is happening. You're not going to be a paperclip maximizer. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know if you guys are familiar with paperclip maximizer. This is
I don't think I've heard that before, but I assume it's like pencil pusher type of just
it's
cog in
an
the
AI
machine.
it's an AI doomsday scenario where you
Mm.
set up a super intelligent AI to accomplish a simple task such as make paper clips. And this thing ends up taking that directive and it creates paper clips out of everything, including all the humans and every atom in the planet and all of so
No.
it's knowledge
Okay.
without understanding. So here's my point. If you tell a human make paper clips, they're going to realize there's a reason why I'm making this paper clip. It's to hold paper together. Does not make any sense to destroy the paper and the people who use it in order to create the paper clips out of them. But the
Yeah.
thing doesn't understand that because it's not in the rules. No one says in the rules, do not create paper clips out of humans or whatever. It doesn't make any sense to do that. So there's this conscious observer, in my opinion, that is the component of judgmental of what actually happens. Like what are we going to actually do? Something, we got to go right, we got to go left. Someone has to make a choice here. And you're going to observe what that choice is. And you get to choose to accept it or choose to reject it. But you don't get to create it. So this goes back to free will and free won't. So
Yeah.
my concept is best defined by this title of free won't, meaning you get to choose not to do the thing that's presented for you as the solution, but you don't get to choose to create it.
Well, and I think that also ties back into what you were saying about, audience member in an amphitheater experiencing that awe. Okay.
Mm.
Well, that also ties into Blue Dress and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Laurel, where
Exactly.
Yeah.
you have this certain configuration in your brain and you happen to be standing in that one spot in the amphitheater
Precisely
where
it.
you
That's exactly it.
experience, you have that experience where the person standing next to you is just like, this band kind of sucks,
Exactly.
and it's
100%.
just,
Yep.
yeah, I don't mean it's,
Wow.
and that's to me, you can take that as far as you want, where it's okay. So the universe spent 14 billion years moving atoms around to get to that one point where it can look at what it created and be in awe of itself through
It's
you.
it reminds me of, so like you said, Tucker, like sometimes like the brain just goes in like multiple directions. It's like, man, I have so many things I want to say, but I got to pick one or whatever. But the way you just said like that, that configuration, uh I can't remember if either of you guys have seen Everything Everywhere All at Once. I know I've mentioned it to both of you before, but
Not
there's
yet.
a
Not yet. It's
great
on my
there's
list. Yeah.
yeah, there's a really, really great line where someone says all we really get is a few moments where any of this really makes sense. And then the mom is like, well, then I will cherish those moments. It's very beautiful. Anyway, so,
I
but
believe
that's
it's
a,
like a flash.
yeah,
It's just like that. It's so
yeah,
quick, and that's the observer effect. Going back to what Tucker was saying about the 14 billion years, and I would tie that back to his like epigenetic concept, or you have some sort of like a very strong association with your lineage. I mean, I'd say it's like dogs. Retrievers want to retrieve and border collies want to herd and all these things. I
mm,
mean, because it feels a certain way to be that dog.
mm,
And then you combine that with the conscious, your consciousness is going to be a narrator of your life and you're going to have this accumulation of stories. Now, imagine you go 30 years in your life and then you get amnesia. And that's all. Like your body's perfectly fine. You just wake up one day and let's just say for whatever reason you have amnesia and you can't remember anything. I mean, you can remember like English and how to tie your shoes and how to walk and ride a bicycle or whatever if you know how to ride a bicycle. But like all your history's gone, let's just say. Okay?
Yeah.
Like you're a different person, but you're not. You're exactly the same exact human being physically, every cell, every atom. But I'm saying, like, if you lose your memory, your narration of your own lifetime, you're just unhooked. You're just not, you're like, you can't even fathom how crazily discombobulating that would be, right? To be
Yeah.
without your own history. You don't know your name. You don't know you don't even know your name. You don't know where you're at. This happens on occasion. Usually it's obviously some kind of a, stroke or some kind of a,
Yeah.
medical
Or,
event. But
Alzheimer's, you know what I mean? Like
thank
that's
you. Also, that's a
dementia,
great point. Yeah,
Yeah,
dementia. Yeah, exactly. So let's say dementia. So you have someone who physically is losing their ability to narrate. But if you ask them to, create something, I'm sure they could, hey, let's make up a song right now. Like, doesn't have to do with your memory. Let's do something now. It's,
Yeah, yeah.
so it's going to be a different kind of effect. And I guess my point is, you have the crucial nature of the observer to feedback loop with this creative side. So top down and bottom up. That was the right. The dress guy's
Yeah,
terminology was top down,
yeah,
bottom up. So bottom up is how you feel about being a border collie. So like when a loud noise goes off, you go crazy, man. Like something
yeah.
flashes in front of you, you go crazy, man. You're like super perceptive. You're super into everything. But if you're like a sleepy bulldog or something, who cares?
Yeah,
I'm just gonna, it's too much effort to get up on these little legs and my giant body. It's like I'm
yeah,
just, if you come near me, I'm gonna bite you. I'm gonna hold on forever, and you're never gonna get me off your body, whatever. So
yeah.
but their strategy is dependent upon how they feel, which is dependent upon what kind of creature they are and what their environment is. So then your narration is then playing to the actual reality you find yourself in. So back to 14 billion years, you have this long sweep of time where everything is an effect of a previous cause, right? And you have this unbroken chain of cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, till we get here now. And now you find yourself in this body. You woke up. You were a child. You didn't plan to be here. It just happened, and now
Yeah.
you have to start turning your duality into a functional mechanism. And then we get into like culture and just indoctrination or whatever you want to call,
Yeah.
maybe civilizing, breaking a human from an animal and making them compliant to wear clothes and get haircuts and go to the dentist and all these crazy things that animals never would have planned on doing. I mean, if you want to think about it.
Yeah, go to the dentist. That's a good one. You know. Yeah.
wear
Okay, so
glasses, this
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
crazy shit.
exactly. Yeah.
so this got me thinking about, the article several years ago where they came out and they did this study and they found out something like 40% of the population doesn't have an inner voice, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, they don't talk to themselves. They don't have inner
So,
dialogue,
Inner
monologue or whatever.
monologue, yeah, inner
yeah,
Yeah,
monologue,
yeah.
yeah.
this and talking about the whole free will thing, what if free will was an evolutionary trait where at some point something evolved in the human lineage where somebody all of a sudden has a voice in their head that the rest of the population doesn't, and that actually ended up being a good thing on an evolutionary scale. And so it has become much more of a human trait, but we have not bred out the people who don't have free will, who don't
Well, let
have
me
that
ask. Let me
voice
ask you,
that
Tony.
lets them question things they interact with. They just
Let me ask you.
somehow
Mm.
float through life with no voice in their head, which is crazy to me. But
Let,
what
let me
if the
ask you though.
voice
Let
in
me
your
ask you.
head is the free will?
What would you have as a voice in your head if you didn't have English as a language?
That's a very good question.
So my point is the evolution of consciousness way predates language. This is something like at an animalistic level, meaning African wild dogs are conscious. Okay, they don't speak a
Sure.
language. And so when you get to the way it feels to be a
Yeah.
thing, that is a subjectivity that rides on top of something that had to be there before you knew what it felt like to feel like a thing. Meaning, when an animal reacts in pure instinct, it's not deciding what it's doing. It's, this is a movement I'm making, and then it feels a certain way to have experienced that thing. but there's no time to process that. There's no, we've seen with, you know, functional MRI examinations, the choice to move happens before you're consciously aware of it, et cetera. And so there's a phenomenon of evolution where evolution allows us to have this observer effect, but it is not the decider. It's too slow. It's ineffective. You're not going to do like plan A, plan B, plan C when a bear jumps out at you. You just feel yourself running. I'm moving. You don't even know. It's literally like pulling your hand off the hot stove. You don't even know you're doing it. And what happens is if you're lucky enough to live, you narrate what just happened after the fact and say, whoa, so glad I jumped up that tree. Everybody else
Yeah.
run up a tree when the bear comes,
Right.
okay? The guy who doesn't do that, he dies. He gets no narration, but, you know, maybe he didn't have any trees nearby. So, I mean, coming up from an animalistic point of view, I think the inner monologue is very interesting, but it's going to be a hyper conscious layer. Like humans have this as a function of the power of linguistic ability. Meaning, I don't know of any other, maybe songbirds or something. There's little monkeys that make calls that are different. I know that they've recorded calls for like eagle versus lion or tiger or something, ground versus air attack. I mean, animals do have, you know, orcas, obviously they have dialects, you know, and they're communicating, and they have, I don't know if you've ever seen the strand fishing tactics of dolphins. Certain dolphins can strand fish, meaning they'll coordinate a shallow water attack where they kind of like swim up on their sides and force a little school of fish up onto the bank, and then they eat them right there. But they all coordinate
Wow.
and do it in time. Yeah. So there's plenty of conversation in the animal kingdom. I'm just thinking about the complexity of an inner monologue. It's like highest of the highest level. I think it's a great determiner of like the human level of intelligence. I wonder I just wonder if the animals must have an inner monologue. It just must be representative of their level of abstraction. It can't be in English, obviously, but like
Which is
they must think.
interesting though too, because animals do understand language. Like you can tell a dog, yeah, you know, not like universally, like they learn it. They can learn it. Like a dog can learn that the
Absolutely.
English word sit means to do something. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like a
yes,
dog like
exactly.
recognizes its name of, you know what I mean?
Well,
So that's
let's
really
declare
interesting to
that the
me,
word
right?
sit does not, this word sit does not objectively mean to put your butt on the ground. We associate that sound with that action, and a dog does too, right? This is what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think there's
You know,
many phenomena of that, but the utilization of it in an abstract form in your head, I think that's hard to carry over until you get to the human level of capacity, which is a
yeah.
really interesting distinction of consciousness as we declare it. Like, I think it's a fascinating thought experiment.
Yeah.
And I
Um,
think it's also interesting because I think it's probably more prevalent in humans because of the civilizations we have created over time, where it's you're not hunting, foraging, and sleeping. That's not your entire day. So then you
yeah.
have these pockets of time where the early humans finally had time to just sit and be observers
Right.
and to actually think about what they were observing and how it all fits together, as opposed to where's the next apple,
Yeah.
where
It's
is
a
the deer herd,
yeah.
and I'm tired from chasing a deer all day and now it's time to sleep.
Yeah.
And maybe
It's a
that's a component of what came first, the inner voice or dreams. Did dreams teach us
Interesting.
how to have thoughts outside of what we're just observing, to be able to observe one thing and think about something else?
Fascinating.
is there
Two things real quick if I can, John. Just throw them out
yeah,
there
yeah,
just so
yeah,
they're on
yeah.
the docket before I lose them. One is, it sounds like the thesis of Jared Diamond's Guns, Germs, and Steel, throwing back to this again. Guns, Germs, and Steel talking about how humans evolved as a function of where they ended up geographically on the planet, meaning if you didn't have domesticatable plants and animals nearby, it's going to take you 12 hours a day just to get the bare necessity calories, and you're not going to have a bunch of time to do other things. So to your point, Tucker, it's like a really a function of luxury time that you can develop a complex language
Yeah.
and then making abstractions like writing, and all this stuff. And so I think that is the key, is a calorie surplus, which means you have to have, not a natural level of items. Like humans have bred through selection, obviously, grains and trees of orchard type and pigs and cattle and all these things that we take for granted took,
Hmm.
thousands and tens of thousands of years of selective breeding and animal husbandry, and we didn't create them. So certain areas had, the derivative of beef or whatever, and certain areas had derivative of what pork was, eventually, etc. So I think that is a massive indicator of this next level of consciousness, is being able to have the time. And there was a second one, which was the what was it? Jared Diamond, and then the dang it, I forgot the second one. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. I wanted to go real quick back to the linguistic thing. It's something I saw at work. I just want to share quick. I think I've seen it before. It's really cool. Someone was talking about words, power of words, and and it was just they call it spelling because it casts spells on us.
That's
you
funny.
so like that. But the way what Tucker, what you said about the difference between like dreams and the inner monologue, was it in that Penrose video or it was in one of the podcasts that you sent, Bob? Somebody was talking about like how
That's exactly what I
interesting
was
it
trying to
is.
find, John. By the way, that's
The
exactly what I was.
the
That was the
dream,
one I forgot.
yeah, where the brain, like the almost absurdity that the brain can switch from okay, well, this is my reality, I'm awake, this is what I believe is true about whatever, and then just almost in the blink of an eye, or the moment, the moments it takes to fall asleep can just be like, and now
Yep.
I'm in this dream state, and not just and not just by default be like, this is absurd. How did I go from like what I believe is real
Because
to
it
like this
feels
without
so
going like,
it
wait a
feels
second, this is, yeah,
real. It feels
very
just like real.
gnarly, right? Yeah.
It's so gnarly. And here's one of the most interesting things. First of all, that is 100% a bullseye, John. That was literally the second point I was trying to remember. It's so cool that
Oh,
you
right
got
on.
that. Yeah. But yeah, the waking part is just another form of dream, is the concept. So the waking, when you're awake, this is as much a dream as when you're dreaming is real, like as if you're awake. There are equivalencies. And so we've all talked about this before. You take a hallucinogenic compound, mushrooms or something, and things don't seem to be real anymore. Like reality breaks down. It doesn't mean that the reality is changing.
Hmm.
It's your feeling of what it's like. How you see the walls move, etc. How it, all
Right.
the weird sensations. They're all synthetic. It's none of this is actual real. It's all a simulation. Now, if your simulation overlays reality such that when you see a chair, there's really a chair there, when you sit down, you don't fall. If you were
Hmm.
to not match up your synthetic reality with reality, you're probably not going to navigate the real world very well. So I think there is this evolutionary component. It drives this matching synthesis of a conscious observer with, the experience it feels. But look, man, this thing turns off and on. I think I told you before, I don't know if we've ever recorded it. There was a time when I had a really traumatic emotional event with a hailstorm, and I got pelted with
Mm.
hail rocks. Okay, like giant golf ball sized hail coming 50, 60 miles an hour all over my body. And after the first one hit me, and one of my kids was screaming in terror, and I started running, I just didn't know what happened. I just all of a sudden I grabbed her up, ran inside, and it wasn't until 15 minutes later when I went to take a shower and I took my shirt off in the bathroom that I was covered in welts. And I realized I'd been just welted all over my body as if someone had pelted me with like paint, like those paint gun. What do they call them?
Paintballs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
paintballs. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just like all over my back and my shoulders and my arms and stuff. And I never felt it until I took my shirt off. Like the
Yeah.
entire reality of that disappeared when I got hit one time in the top of my head. The first one that hit me, I felt that one. I felt nothing after that. And it literally, I'm not saying like, oh, it was like it was diminished or it was, no, I literally was surprised when I took my shirt off that I was covered in welts.
Wow.
So I'm saying things just change in the reality of what it feels like when this other thing takes over, the subconscious. So your model is completely dependent upon the creator, i.e., your dream maker. Who's making your dreams? You are, but you don't know the
Yeah.
Well,
place that the dream is coming from, right? You're
and
surprised in a dream.
to me, you can tie that back into the ancestral memory we were talking about. So somewhere in your lineage, one of your ancestors got caught in a giant hailstorm, and somehow
Mm.
that knowledge passed on to your brain, where when you got hit with that first hailstone, your brain went, turn the pain off.
That's
I've already
Wow.
done
interesting.
this once before, turn the pain off.
Well, let me ask you this. It wasn't a conscious choice to turn the paint off, so there had to be some decision made. I don't know what the mechanism is. I'll steelman it your way, which is there's a program internal. Now, let me ask you this. I can steelman it your way, but does the program, is it a fixed program at birth? Like you were just, this is the way the dice rolled up and you feel this way when it happens and you do this thing? Or does it change? And then when your proposition, when you pass along your genes, does the change that you experience pass along with it in your lifetime, or is it just luck of the draw? This is your code, and your code will give you the answer at the time. But is it changeable, or is it fixed from birth?
I think we look at the brain maybe the wrong way sometimes, that we look at it as a computer, but it's not, because the brain is hardware that creates software, whose software creates the hardware.
Hmm.
Because you have this brain structure, but it's not a CPU. It's not just here's your brain. What you experience changes that CPU, and it grows new neurons and new connections, which then allows you to experience in a different way, which then creates new neurons and new connections. And so, yeah, I think some of that probably is cooked in at birth, but it's not a stable system. It's constantly changing.
Yeah. I mean, it's nature nurture, and I mean, I it's so it's like so many things. I just think it's obviously not one or the other, right? It's both of them.
No,
Mm,
Like there's
yes,
this like
agreed.
mix, It's I gotta say this real quick. So the the hail story. I know you shared that with me. It was around August 5th because I have this note in my notes that I track a lot of stuff with about maybe there was a hailstorm here and I sent you pictures of it. There were like pretty big
Exactly.
hail,
Yep.
and I had this note here like, oh, maybe we can call this hailing poets, not sending poets, because hail like. And then
Like it.
and the reason I found that um this is interesting to me, but it's probably just useless information, but it's very interesting to me because I have all these like notes and dates tracked. I found that because you were talking about everything's a simulation or whatever, and it reminded me of a TED talk I saw. Anil Seth is the guy's name, and he said we're all hallucinating all the time, including right now. It's just that when we agree about our hallucinations, we call that reality. And so
Exactly.
anyway,
oh, I like
I
that.
took
Yeah.
I saw that like a week after I made this note about hailing poets. So again, that doesn't really mean anything, but in my brain, I think it's kind of
No,
neat
that's a
that
great.
like I went to
That's
look for that quote and it's like, oh, that was a week after you told me your hail story the first time.
that's
you know.
really
Well, and
cool. Pattern
it's
recognition. I
weird
like
because
it.
I
Yeah.
also like
Uh,
the concept that, like, you never really touch anything. You you put your hand on the desk. You're not actually touching the desk. You are touching the magnetic field created by the atoms that make up that desk. And so it's like we're
and
not
then your
really
brain is telling
interacting.
you what you're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
And
Oh,
or
most
our
of
you're
those
brain's
are
telling us
most.
we're sitting in a chair, but we're not. We're sitting on an electromechanical field created by the atoms that make up a chair. So we're not, like, we
and we,
don't
yeah,
even
and it's a chair
interact
because like
with reality the way we think we do.
yeah,
But
we
that's
all
just
agreed
the
to call it a
story.
chair.
Yeah, that's the story our brain has created. That's what we're
Yeah,
telling
we
ourselves.
all, yeah, based on this like group, like, well, we all decided that that thing is called a chair. in the English language. Like
Yeah.
if all of a sudden you're plopped in, a group of people that don't speak English, and you're like, this is a chair, that they're not gonna know what you're talking about. Like
But just
they
hold on
don't,
one second. This
you know what I
think about how powerful that is evolutionarily. Meaning, you and I and Tucker and
mean?
everybody shares this concept of chair that we can interchange in talking about our ideas or our plans, or we have an infinite number of these things, obviously, that we share. Think about how powerful that is to compress these ideas so we don't have to, like, how else would you do it? Demonstrations? Like, I don't understand how you could
Mm,
convey information without this power of putting a label on a thing. That's what we're talking
yeah,
about. These labeling is such a powerful concept.
yeah, totally. So, we've been talking about free will. I should mention the other article that I think Tucker, you passed it along, and I saw it like pop up. In fact, even Kim was like, "Hey, this sounds interesting," and I'm like, "Oh, that's that article I was just." But it was in the L.A. Times, and it's this Stanford scientist Robert Sapolsky wrote this book. I think it's out or it's going to be coming out, called "Determined: A Science of Life Without Free Will," and I thought it was so interesting because, if I remember right, he was very like apprehensive and hesitant to actually even publish it because he just knew like a lot of people would be like, "No, this is nonsense." One of the things I wanted to say, that like at the beginning of the article, it really pulls it out this way. It says about epilepsy, and it just says, by and large, it's accepted that a person who causes a fatal traffic accident while in the grip of a seizure should not be charged with murder. And this guy, Robert Sapolsky, is saying that basically that should be applied to everything, whether you have epilepsy or not. Like this idea that your subconscious is really in the driver's seat. It's doing everything, and your conscious mind is observing. Um, and for me, it's like I think a lot of that has made more and more sense the more, Bob, you've shared stuff about this, and I've been thinking about it. But it's all about the way it's framed up, right? It's like it's too easy to just
Well, go back
it's
to
too
the
easy
go
to
go back
dismiss
to
if we
the
just say, well, it's all out of our control. Like
John,
there's a better way to.
go back to the metaphor of going downhill skiing, and you have a tree in front of you. Okay, what
Mhm.
what the concept that I'm talking about is your subconscious gives you a generative concept, predictive model of how to go left and how to go right, and you get to choose. Meaning, I don't want this one, or I don't want that one, but you don't get to make up the set of options. It goes back to the
Yeah,
Sam Harris thing with the movie selection. Like, what movie do we want to watch? Well, let me think about it. Do I want to watch Dude, Where's My Car? No, I don't want to watch that. Do I want to watch Ghostbusters? No, I don't. How did I pick those? Well, something gave it to me. Something gave me
yeah,
that concept of those movies. I don't know why. It just
yeah.
gave me, it's solving for the thing of like, do I go left or do I go right? It's giving me options. Consciously, you get to choose, not free will, but free won't. I don't want to go
Yeah.
left.
It won't surprise you, but I do have a spreadsheet of movies that like when I'm like, I want to watch something, I've got two actually. I've got one for like the things that I know I'm going to rewatch multiple times. By the way, we watched Renfield yesterday. I don't Nicolas Cage. I mean, what a great actor, but highly recommend Renfield. Anyway, but I've got another spreadsheet where I've even got a column for like Kim to look through and be like, yeah, I'd like to watch that with you, so I know wait for Kim to watch it. Anyway,
It's
so
awesome.
but okay, so I got to show these haikus I wrote because about the subconscious conscious model. I wrote these yesterday or Friday morning, I guess. Uh, I think it was in the episode we did about the subconscious stuff. Bob, you were talking about the mixing board being a sort of analogy. So it's actually two haikus, but I think you'll like them. So imagine a song. You are at the mixing board. You're mixing the song.
Hmm,
So the song is life. Your subconscious is the board. Your conscious observes. And
interesting.
because like I remember you talking about the sliders on the board, like
Well,
that's your
here's
model,
here's the here's the literal here's the
right?
literal interpretation of that. The sliders are the weights of
Yeah,
the
right.
neural net that is the model. So when you're talking about life, when you judge a thing, you're not creating it, but you judge it. And you're judging it on whether its prediction was correct or not. So if you are correct in your subconscious prediction, you feel good. It's all good. It's flow state. You just don't have to do anything. You just sit back and fucking shoot jumpers all day long, and they're just going to rain in nothing but net. Okay.
Hmm.
As soon as you get a loss, now you have to tell yourself, man, my prediction wasn't great. It didn't work. And so that example, in a corollary sense, you're going to reweight it so that next time it will
Yeah.
not give you that same answer, so to speak, of how to go left or how to go right. But you fine tune it through your consciousness as judgment of performance. But you are the one who also is the one deciding amongst go left or go right. So you can't see it both ways. You have to be a participant to counter the doctor's point of view that you are a passive participant. I'm saying you're actively participating, but your role is different than most people think their role is.
Yeah. I think that's the key of it all, is that, for me anyways, is just thinking about it differently. So like the last line in the haiku, there's like your conscious observes. Well, there's probably like more I could have gone into there, but 17 syllables. But anyway, but
No,
yeah,
that's exactly it. Your
like
conscious observes. That's the whole
yeah.
point. Is
But when
that
the
is
next
your
song
point.
comes in, like we do have this ability, I believe, right? Like in it's free will or free won't or whatever, but the next song that comes in, like to consciously go, this time I want more bass in it. I want to like reweight this
Interesting.
part of the board so that
Well, let me
I
put
can
it this way, John. Let me
experience
put
it
it this
new
way.
this time.
I think this is a really good distinction. Let me ask you this. When the subconscious is translating an input and modeling a predictive output for you, what do you think it's doing its predictive output based on? Like
The
out of
last
all the
time it
things,
happened.
well, sort of. I think it's like your objective function of what you want to have happen consciously. It's trying to feed you what you want predictively,
Mm,
like the algorithm, to trigger your feeling good. So it's learning you, just like Google learns you, just like Facebook learns you, how to press your
mm,
buttons, not consciously. It just learns this is what feels good for us because it is you too.
yeah,
So when you get
right.
this predictive capability that works in tune with you, meaning you know it's happening, you relinquish control. I'm the observer. I'm going to work with you. You're working with me. Everything resolves. When you don't know this is happening, it feels scary. It feels unpredictable. It feels terrifying at times. And when you focus on the wrong thing, which is conscious control of free will, you will never see this thing actually happen. You think you're doing everything. You're taking credit for everything. Blame as
Yeah,
well. So back to the doctor's point.
yeah,
Are we blameless? Well, it's mitigated, I would say. It's not you're blameless, but it's heavily mitigated.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and
And he
it's
says that too. Recognition and punishment, both of them aren't really like you know. But yeah, go ahead, Tucker.
you look at the just human nature too. Um, Look at the effectiveness of propaganda on large groups.
Bingo.
Mm,
And me personally, I have always been very leery of groupthink. I don't want to be in a political party. I don't want to be
yeah.
in a movement because I think that groupthink and that propaganda feedback loop of, oh, this makes me feel good, takes away from the human experience of trying to look at it as an individual rather than as a group where this is how we see this. And it scares me how susceptible we are to propaganda, even when you're aware of it,
Totally.
that we're able to be steered in directions that are not conscious, that we are made to feel a certain way based on someone else's understanding of how to manipulate the human mind.
Social
Yeah,
contagion. Social
yeah,
contagion is a real thing. That mimicry, that evolved, we're a social creature. We evolved to transmit information. This is such a beautiful point, by the way, as a global level point. Let
hmm,
me put a fine point on it. Think about your face. Just think about your face and how hard it is to hide your intentions, such that One of the most profitable things in the world is to be a poker player, where you can
I was gonna say poker face.
prevent anybody from knowing what you're about to do. It is so hardwired into the human that we make a career out of it, where you could be a multi-millionaire if you can convincingly lie to other people when real
Yeah,
money is on the
gnarly.
fucking line, dude. We have
Yeah.
evolved to make it involuntary, pre-language. This is the first communication. It's body language,
True.
pre-abstract language. Your face is sharing. I mean, we've gone down laughter. I'm not going to beat that into the ground again, but your body has involuntary signals that we communicate information one to another. And the point is that Tucker's saying is it's accepted at the subconscious, unconscious level, produced and received at the subconscious, unconscious level. So everybody's susceptible to it. It's so hardwired in that your only choice really is to not look at it. That's just 100%. Like the conscious choice of putting your eyes on that thing is your one and only savior. Once you go down and you put your eyes on it and you're immersed in the thing, you will be contextualized by it. You cannot avoid it.
Yeah. And go back to what you were saying, Tucker, too, about like the groupthink thing. I think that's why it's so important to be allowed to disagree. Like that, to me, that's a huge flag. If there is this, if there's any kind of movement or social contagion or something that
Dogma.
doesn't allow, questions that, then you're talking about like cult stuff, right? Like how many podcasts have I heard on, through Time Suck about cult behavior and wow, like, so I think that's, I work for a company and like one of their sort of slogans or whatever is like celebrate disagreement. And I think that's like so timely right now, that human beings should all feel comfortable disagreeing with and being disagreed with, and not, you know, it's a change, I think, though, because I think a lot of it's maybe baked into, survival instinct or just primal behavior to detect disagreement as a threat,
That's
and
interesting. That's
respond
really,
in a way of like, wait, you're disagreeing with me? Well, you're wrong, I'm right. And, ultimately this drive of like, and now I have to kill you, which is
yes.
just, I really think we're at a part in our evolution as a species where we're recognizing as, collectively, like, wait a sec, we don't have to kill each other anymore. We
I
don't
don't
have
think
to keep
so.
killing each other.
But that's not what it feels like. That's not what it feels like. It always feels
I
like
feel
you're
that
being
way a lot.
attacked.
I feel
When
that way a
someone
lot, though.
disagrees with you, I think this is beautiful, by the way, John. Let me throw another metaphor on the table, which is we're going for a hike. We're going to go from here. We're going to get to there. Okay. Disagreement would kill that group. Like it doesn't. It's almost like the squirrel. So the squirrel going across the street. If it stays on one side of the street, it's safe. If it runs across right away, gets to the other side, it's safe. If it goes in the middle of the street and it sits there and thinks about it,
Yeah.
that's when he gets hit by the car. And so the point is, a decisive decision, right or wrong, by a group is evolutionarily superior almost always. And
Mm.
so we are baked up as creatures, DNA style, to have an aversion to this. You want to go left, I want to go right. Like you're literally, like our lives are on the line, is what I'm saying. It's triggering to the point of fight or flight.
Well, and I think, I appreciate Daigle's mindset where, we, and I can't say we because it's only some of us have evolved to the point where it's like, yes, we can disagree in peace. But then you run into the tolerance paradox where it's, we can only disagree to a point where one group goes, I disagree with you to an extent that I believe your point of view needs to be eradicated. And as a society, you can no longer tolerate that group because they want to eradicate you. They disagree with you to a point where
But they're going to say
they,
intolerance is intolerable.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and look at Israel right now. That's what it
Yeah.
is. It's
Well, and it's like when I said that, I do need to catch myself like from time to time. I heard this, I think it was at work actually, or maybe it was on LinkedIn. Somebody said, we think in generalities, but we live in specifics. And I
Hmm.
recognize I have this tendency, and I don't think it's just me, but like, because like, look at memes, you know what I mean? Like, in fact, I have a haiku about memes. I should look it up. In fact,
What
that's
was
what
your
I'm going to do
second
right now.
haiku, John? What was your second haiku, by the way? I think we jumped off the rail and we got your first one. What was your second one?
No, there was two there about the
Oh, there
mixing
was.
board. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
We got
yeah.
we
So
got
there
both.
was there was two there, but
Okay.
what was the shit? Oh, memes. Oh yeah. So okay, facts require more words than can fit on a meme, so memes are not facts. And what I mean is like, like how many memes you see where it's just like a single color background and it's like a sentence, less than a sentence. But it's making this broad, huge claim, right? It's trying to really overgeneralize a facet of human experience.
John, it's
Um,
using a metaphor to compress a vast amount of information, is what you're describing. So it's not
and
factual, it's metaphorical. And that's where the power of the meme comes in.
and if it's something that like, I mean, I get very like basic with this sometimes, but I feel like if it's something that is positive, like kind of, makes someone laugh, like then fuck yeah. But when I see the things that's like, you know, promoting like fear and hate and stuff, I'm just like, waste. I really have a hard time with those, man. I'm like, that's not helping anybody. That's oversimplifying something. Like there's, and I guess like it's me really that I'm talking about. Like I don't know what other people are feeling and processing when they see that, but sometimes I see those things and I'm like, I don't think this is useful to anybody. It's very
Well,
gnarly,
I would go back to the concept of disagreement. Okay, so when people are sharing memes, they're either promoting their, you know, propositions, or they're, reducing the power of their opponent's propositions somehow, right? So it's kind of like mimetic warfare of ideas, in that there's an evolution, a competition of these viral ideas of which ones can replicate the most. So that is the function of these things. It's like literally putting a petri dish and then putting a bunch of kids' dirty hands all over it and seeing which kid has the funkiest bacteria that's going to take over the fucking petri dish. You know what I'm saying? And so,
yeah. Wow.
so what I'm getting, but here's the thing, dude. The only thing that matters to the bacteria is the environment of the petri dish. So you do not change the bacteria, you change the dish. So you cannot create somebody's awareness, like your awareness is of the memes that you don't like, without having their rule set, their dish, be like yours.
Mm,
So the complex nature of the thing is going back to, what is your subconscious solving for? What is it trying to give you? Have you decided what your objection function is? If we're all on the same objection function, we can work together. Our subconsciousness will synthesize solutions for going left or going right around the tree. And we all agree there's a tree there, and we all agree we're on skis and we're all going downhill 40 miles an hour and we need to do this thing. If we can't get to that level, your subconscious is going to predict something totally different from mine, and we're never going to agree, and we're going to hit the fucking tree because no decision will be made. And so
mm,
that is this splitting, this threatening behavior. Is I'm going to say, if I'm on team blue, we go left. And you're going to say, if you're on team red, we go right. And you and I will kill each other to the fucking death to try to pick left or right, when really we just need to have a leader that says, this is the way we
this is what
go.
we're
As
gonna
long as
do.
this
Yeah,
is what we're going to do, man. And we
yeah.
know we're all on the same team, such that I'm not going to kill myself just to fucking spite you. And I'm not going to let you kill me to spite me. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like a
yeah.
leader is going to step in and say, look, you guys had a chance to work it out the way you wanted to do it. We don't have any choice now. The tree is approaching. We have to make a choice now. At some point,
Yeah.
we're going to keep on hitting this fucking tree, metaphorically speaking, until something happens such that we make a choice. We're going to continuously hit this tree as competing with ourselves in a ridiculous way. meaning humans in general, just to understand how much potential there is for cooperative behavior and sharing of ideas and unlocking the, like, if we all understood the game is unlocking the presets to the fucking video game, like once one guy unlocks it, we all get it unlocked. It should just be a race to unlock these fucking cheat codes. That's all we should be doing. And then everybody would be off to the races, man. But
Well,
what do
yeah,
we?
if we put the world's military budgets into arts and non-military sciences,
If we stopped assessing
I,
each other's threats and saw
you
each
know,
other
Yeah,
as collaborators, that's. But it
exactly.
comes. But it comes down to what John said, which is a disagreement causes mortal fear. So
yeah,
what happens is when you have a collective worldwide, other than the asteroid approaches, we all. This is the whole point of the asteroid movie, by the way. You guys know this. It makes
Yeah,
everybody on the same fucking team. You
yeah,
got one choice
exactly.
right now:
Yeah.
get that asteroid to not hit the Earth or whatever, or we're all going to die. And
Otherwise,
so
we're all dying. Yeah,
the
yeah,
Russians play with the Americans, and they play with the Chinese, who plays with the Japanese, and we all get together. It's a big kumbaya because we
yeah,
realize, like in Independence Day, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
if they're coming for us, they're coming for us all. So there is a moment of realizing what team we're on, and then anything is possible. Literally anything is possible because we are a team creature. We are a social
yeah,
creature that is so bonded in this unity of position on the team: map maker, map reader, follower.
yeah, yeah.
But there's a
Right.
fourth group. I don't know if I've talked about this with you, John. I
You
think I
know,
have.
yeah, I don't think we got into it when you went through that fourth group. So yeah, please
Fourth group is the
dive in.
broker. The broker group is the one who splits up the team in order to gain position for themselves. So imagine the broker is going to split the unity of the followers such that we don't know to go left or right unless we ask the broker, because the broker is going to consolidate the opinion of disparate groups that they've created. Okay. And so this is going to make power in collectivizing the follower group. So the follower follows based on trust of leaders, not on understanding of what we're doing here. So they don't make maps and they don't read the maps. They follow the map makers and the map readers. Now the map maker, once he's made a map, he's unlocked the code. Everybody now who's a map reader can use this thing. So if you've eliminated all the cheat codes on the map maker stops being important. The map maker now is equivalent to a map reader,
Mm.
and so the power is diminished. Now, obviously, you can expand the map, find more
Yeah, yeah.
areas unexplored,
New.
etc. But
Yeah.
in the main line, once you get all the main shit figured out, we don't need map makers anymore. So the broker becomes really powerful. And what I'm
Mm.
saying is, this is what always happens: up the stairs in wooden shoes, down the stairs in silk slippers. So when you're going up the civilizational side, okay, when you go up the stairs, it's a hard slog. You're in functional shoes. They don't feel good, but they get the
Yeah.
job done. We're all on a mission here. As soon as we start going, okay, I want this kind of tennis shoe, and I want a cleat, and I want a running shoe, and I want a boot, and I want a slipper, that's the broker. Okay, slicing it up into a million pieces. This is all
Huh.
metaphor, obviously, such
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there's not a unity, and then what ends up happening is you get towards people realizing, back to you, John, it's all a function of new experience. I want to evolve my, what was the terminology for that third level? My new experiences. They are,
Like novelty seeking,
thank you,
kind
novelty
of.
seeking.
Yeah,
Exactly. No, that's the
yeah.
point, is this novelty seeking such that that is the desire. No one cares about life. Life is easy. Everybody's got life. It's cheap. It's not hard. It's not appreciated. It's like you fucking grind through your standard American diet, your 9 to 5, tear your body up, go home, veg out on a screen. Bingo. Do that for 40 years and you die. Like that's one way to look at it. It's like
Yeah,
we've got so much comfort now.
yeah.
There's
That
it's like
that
the
base psychological needs, that base level of the psychological needs hierarchy, it's it's met for a lot of humans now, the way it
idiocracy.
wasn't,
Yeah. You
yeah.
you end up literally at idiocracy, right? Where all of our needs are met, just like you're talking about. And so you've hijacked the subconscious's objection function desire to satisfy the low level needs. Everybody's got those. But there's no development, there's no challenge, there's no mission, there's no leader pressing the group to follow. in order to achieve greatness for the group, etc. And that's really where we're at, is
Well,
having,
that's yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, having a broker mindset that we can divide this team of humanity up an infinite number of ways at no cost. And I'm saying the
So I don't know
cost
if
is,
this is sorry. I don't know if
no,
this is
go
like
ahead,
the
please.
idealism or whatever, but like to go back to the point about the asteroid, like I just want to believe, or I do believe, I don't know, but like that. First of all, like yes, I totally agree. Like if an asteroid was going to come, I think the majority of the human population would band together, like you said, and we would stop fighting each other
We would
because
take
otherwise we're all going to die. You
the
know,
aircraft carriers would be chopped up instantaneously. We would take all the gasoline that we put in the fighter jets. We would take all the bombs apart. We would use
we
them,
would do
obviously.
yeah. Well, and so my point is like I want to believe that like we don't have to wait for an asteroid for that. We can all choose to start doing that stuff now. We don't have to wait for like a species extinct event type of thing. We can all choose right now to
There's
just
no
get
more
along with
Well,
each other, stop
there's
killing each other, and like
there's no
explore the
but
more
universe.
powerful
You know?
force. There's no more
I
powerful
would
force than
even
an idea whose time has
posit
come, right?
I would even posit that we already have the asteroid. The asteroid is climate change,
Mm, yeah.
and look at look at what's being done. Like we're not we're not doing. We should be dismantling the aircraft carriers and the fighter jets and going, yeah, we don't need this whole industry that pollutes more than any other group on Earth just to kill each other.
Just to kill each
because
other, right?
because that industry is contributing to killing us all,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
we don't have the people who want to lead are not the people who should.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
Politicians,
There's yeah.
to me, there is something fundamentally broken in people who want to be politicians. I just don't understand the desire to force my will and my ideas on an entire population
How
in a
about
way that only suits me. It's like,
multi-generational wealth for your lineage? How about that?
yeah,
It's a pretty big
yeah,
carrot. How about that?
Yeah.
and it is. But
Did one of you
uh,
say already? Was
people
was
are
this
so
earlier? Go
people
ahead.
are
Go ahead.
so short-sighted that yeah, you're building this multi-generational wealth, but you're going about it in a way that is dooming your ancestors because they have to live on the same planet as everybody else. And these ideas of these tech billionaires building doomsday bunkers and stuff like that, it's like, okay, that's great. Who built that for you? You didn't
Mm.
build that, and the people who built it can unbuild it with you inside of it.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
there's
the
that,
thing,
and
right?
then there's also the fact who's guarding you. Okay, well, at what point do those guards, being humans themselves, go, if I just took this gun that I'm using to protect this person and used it on them, then this is all mine and it's my family's.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
just
it's
the
gnarly.
whole mindset of this multi-generational wealth and of fuck everybody else, I'm going to get mine. It's short-sighted, and it's not a viable long-term survival strategy.
Let me
It's
ask,
Yeah.
not going to work.
who's the rich person on a desert island? The guy with a suitcase with $1 million, or the guy with a suitcase of bottled water?
Exactly. It's,
It's
money
all
is,
relative, man. It's all relative. So if we get
Yeah,
to the
because
meltdown
money
point,
has
you
again,
cannot.
it's yeah.
If we get to a
Uh,
meltdown point, if we get to a meltdown point such that it's collectivized, meaning everybody's got to pull together here and make some real left or right decisions as a group, or we're all going to fucking die. Those people are not going to be able to survive. And ultimately, I think their proposition, honestly, is one of, I'll never know the difference. My
yeah.
lifetime is finite. I can accrue so much stuff and package it in New Zealand or wherever, and just I can put a mega yacht together, etc. And so, you know what? They're probably right. For their entire lifetime, if you have that big a pile of gold and you're sitting on it like a fucking dragon, you're probably set, but like lineage, no, your lineage is going to be doomed with everybody else's lineage if this thing goes off the rails.
And it will. I mean, regardless of when it happens or how it happens, it's going to go off the rails. That's just nature,
But there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. So we have opportunities. John knows what I'm talking about, I think, here, right, John?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to crack this egg today. That's a very messy one. But yeah, I mean, there's ideas that could come into play that could counter the effects. I mean, there's opportunities to change the game. Let me put it that way, such that we're not going to be doomed for sure. If we
Sure.
do, and so my point is, there's going to be a struggle, and the people who are, prepping for doomsday or whatever, they're not going to be the ones coming up with the ideas that are going to at least have a chance for our kids, etc., having a chance to have a hope, right? Because it's going to be pretty disastrous here, asteroid style. It's going to be pretty disastrous if we don't change these behavior types.
Yeah. The wealth thing, I think it was in one of those, maybe it was the Conversations with Coleman. That was a really interesting episode, right, with Sam Harris. But did he say like something like 60% or 80% of wealth in, I think, America specifically, but it could have been the world, is like inherited wealth?
Oh, I believe it.
Or something high up there is gnarly.
Wealth is one of these things. Like, how much is this Picasso worth? Well, I mean, is it my tax form or is it my banker's form?
Yeah,
I'll put a different number on
right.
each one.
Yeah,
So
it's
who
that
the
agreement
fuck knows?
thing, It's that agreement. Like on the desert island, like
exactly where I was going with
if
that.
there's
I know
if
water is water has
water's
unlimited value on a desert
yeah,
island. Let me put it that way.
But if the briefcase of $1 million, like in that scenario, if there's no agreement that it's worth anything, then it's just, I mean, it's like it's kindling, right? I mean, you could burn it for
it's exactly
fire.
fire starter. Yeah.
Well, and that leads me to this: who has more money or wealth? Elon Musk with however many billions he has, or whoever gets the first asteroid towed into orbit with a way to mine it. Money's just paper. It's material. It's
exactly.
It's the ability to create something that is the real wealth, because whoever tows the first asteroid into
Tucker,
orbit and starts mining it,
I wish money was
that's
even
the richest
paper.
person ever.
I don't even think they dignify. I don't even think they dignify people with paper anymore. It's just like electrons now.
Yeah, true. True.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's all, I mean, the agreement
a really
is still
big
there,
point, actually.
but it's
a really
numbers
big point that
databases.
we crossed over a line in the sand, which is tying our abstraction, which is money, to anything concrete in any way, shape, or form, such that the people who want to make aircraft carriers and nukes and whatever, submarines, they can just make more zeros appear like magic, on a computer. There's no reality tied to any of this, monetary system anymore. It's completely subject to the whims and will of a political class of elites and, all the corporate, people who feed off the trough, the hogs that are feeding off this trough of fiat money, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Well, and I have this idea that part of me wants to turn it into reality. Part of me wants to turn it into a work of fiction. And part of me doesn't even want to breathe it out into the world because it could lead to a dystopia in its own right. But you tow an asteroid into orbit. Well, how do you mine it? Well, you take those billions of PlayStation 4s and PlayStation 5s, and you use those to control little mining robots. You make a video game out of it. But then you get this whole dystopia where you have
Ender's Game.
The entire world, Ender's Game, the entire world population plugged into VR every day,
Yeah.
I think I
mining
like it, Tucker.
virtually.
Here's the thing, though. I like it, other than one thing, which I think it's quaint that you think humans would be superior to AI. Like the
And
humans are going to be
Oh,
it
humans are going to be
wouldn't, but
fucking way hind teat in just about a minute. Just go back to what was it, like mid '90s with Deep Blue and Kasparov, right? Losing in chess. That was the beginning of the end. I mean, we're just not going to be that thing.
I think the powers that be know that well enough that, well, how do you? Okay, the AAI is not going to placate the population. You got to keep the
I
population
believe in
busy.
Idiocracy. I believe in Idiocracy. It was Kick My Balls was the best, like the number one show on TV. It was Kick My Balls, right? Like and so the Academy Award goes to, right, the Kick My Balls guy for testicular damage. Anyway, I just don't think that when you satisfy base needs, you're going to have anybody complain about shit.
True.
It's going to self-evolve into like this algorithmic outcome that nobody predicts based on engagement. So they're going to engage passivity. How do we pacify everybody? Well, you take care of every little titillation. You constantly emerge new ideas and new contexts. You have to constantly satisfy the desire for exploration. This is the whole thing. The consciousness really earns its money at novelty. So let me give you a thought experiment. So if you go in the woods and you're walking around and you see a tree bent over and you see a string on the end of that tree, like a sapling, and you see it like in a circle on the ground and like a tiny little piece of wood just barely holding it on and like some leaves kind of scattered over the top. Even if you've never seen one of these things before, you know what a tree under tension does, and you know what a string could do, and all the rest. Obviously, I don't have to explain it. But without ever having seen this before, your consciousness would be able to determine the causal nature of this contraption such that you wouldn't step in the snare. And what I'm saying is animals on the subconscious level that are just working in a corollary standpoint, they would have to learn from their mistake. And they're not going to be able to pre-plan what comes next. So they only get one shot at the snare, and most of them don't get a second. So humanity is keyed in. The conscious thing, the thing that makes us feel good, I mean the conscious part of us, loves novelty seeking because that's our shit, man. That's our fucking jam, dude. Okay, when we get into novelty, I get to recognize patterns. I get to
yeah.
predict what comes next. I'm the fucking hero now, and we all crave that thing such that we'll sit down and scroll TikTok or whatever infinite number of times because we're just getting 30 seconds of novelty at a time for an infinite scroll. It's so powerful. Like our body's not able to resist this thing.
Yeah. It's pretty like crazy to think of it that way, man.
Well, and that's the
I think
thing.
there's
If
a lot
we
there.
put the military budgets into art, you've got that. You have that constant flow of novelty. Whereas, you know, when you're trying to steer society in the direction I kind of see it going, where it's just, you know, a subservient subclass to the elite, eventually are they just going to get to a point where it's like, we don't have to create this content, we don't have to create the novelty, we just have to create the dopamine. And so everybody gets their little fucking chip on their fucking forehead, you know, Black Mirror style, where there's not even content anymore. You sit down in your chair and you just hit this dopamine switch and go into a trance for 8 hours.
Are you familiar with Brave New World? Brave New World is all about conditioning and programming, meaning like playing thoughts into your head as you sleep, like a recorded session of repeating doctrine into your head as you sleep. Everybody's genetically modified, and then everybody gets these little feel-good pills, like these little soma pills, these little druggy pills that help you feel like no pain and feel euphoria and all the rest. I mean, this is what it is, man. This is the dystopian future. This has been predicted that the cornering of the market is programming on this subconscious level and then giving you something that feels really good. And most people will do anything at that point.
Yep. Yeah,
Wow.
no, it's scary.
But here's the thing. The group of brokers who are dividing up the groupings such that you can look at somebody else and see a difference, like there's an othering. This is all about othering, okay?
Yeah,
Let's go to the heart of it, okay? There's Russell's conjugates. This is Bertrand Russell. He created this system of me, us, them. So when people are trying to conjugate a sentence and they're talking about a factual act, okay, is it a freedom fighter or is it a terrorist? Well, you get to
yeah.
pick, don't you? And as you pick, you get to conjugate this according to me, us, them. So me is always good. Anything I talk about me is always going to be in the best choice of words possible. They're always freedom fighters. Us is I'm talking to you about you and me. We're a team now.
Hmm.
We're freedom fighters. Them is
Yeah,
always terrorists.
terrorists. Yeah. That's why I love Irshad Manji so much. I really think she's like living in the future, you guys, because she talks about this and like, so like you say that, when you say that, Bob, it's kind of like, okay, well, fuck, now what? And like she talks about now what? Like we don't have to do that anymore, you guys. We don't have to look at things that way as us versus them. We really can be
Multi-generational
like
wealth,
us
John.
and them.
Multi-generational wealth. Let me give you an example. Imagine you had a Powerball billionaire lottery ticket in your pocket. How many people are going to say, I don't need to cash this in. I would rather break it up and give it to the entire world? I'm dead serious, by the way. How many
Oh, I
people are going
would.
to be strong enough to say, look, I've got this lottery ticket and I could cash it in for me and mine, or I could turn it back in and do good in the whole planet? But some fraction, like everybody gets $1.50 in their pocket or something. It's not
Well,
going to be
that's
as
what I was gonna say is like, yeah, that it's, um, right, like just splitting it up, like everybody gets a share of this. Well, what is the share? $1? Like that's not gonna do anything.
well. That's what the
Right?
politician says. Look, the politician knows they're inside the sausage factory. They see how it's put together. Everybody's feeding at this pork trough, and if they don't get it, they're just going to miss out. Someone else is going to run in and scarf them food for themselves, and they're not going to fix anything. They're going to have some idealistic, oh, we're going to do this, and I'm not going to be on a red team or blue team, and blah blah blah. They're going to get steamrolled by all the guys who collectively say, we're in this thing for us. We're going to fuck everybody on purpose because we're going to get
Mm,
so massively rich. Now, they're not going to say that verbally. I mean, they're going to have everybody's a hero in their own movie. So they're going to narrate
mm.
some plausible way
Yeah.
to get to, but the subconscious is the objection function that the subconscious is solving for is that. How do I get as much as I possibly can in a short amount of time as I can for me and my family? That's all they care about. Okay. The people, like Tucker said, who evolve naturally into the position of fighting for political power, their objection function is personal power. Now they will narrate consciously. So I don't believe they're doing this like actively, most of them probably not, until they're there for 30, 40 years. And then I
Yeah,
probably
maybe
cannot see,
reflection and like, wow,
I
what have
can't
I
see
done?
anybody who's, I can't see anybody who's made an entire career like Nancy Pelosi style, having jets and multi-billions and shit. Like people that have used, I know she's married into a bunch of wealth too, but anyway, the point is people who might go in with idealistic intent, I think they get converted over time subconsciously, like Tucker was saying, almost propaganda. Okay, the whatever people narrate in that inner sphere, the senator sphere, okay, the congressman sphere, whoever's narrating to one another, the lobbyist sphere, they're pitching a narration that allows you to justify choosing the choice that benefits you alone. So this is what's happening psychologically. They're trying to give you a justification, putting these little memes in your ear about what you're going to justify to yourself to do what you know is not the right thing for the job, meaning doing it for the people. It's going to set
Mhm.
you up for life.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting is that at least among some billionaires, and I'm trying to remember who actually said it. I think it might have been the one of the Shark Tank guys, but it was a couple years ago, and basically he wrote this article where he's like, the pitchforks are coming, and so you have a certain subset of these billionaires who clearly had that drive to create that wealth and set their family up for generations. But they see that tree branch bending and they know it's going to snap back. And they know when it does, all of that they've hoarded likely will be for naught because it will be
Mm.
taken back by the pitchfork wielding masses. And so it's almost like they're having to constantly lie to themselves that they're doing what's right for their family when really they're just following this instinctual need to hoard everything.
But they
And
believe the narration, don't they? Don't you think they
I
believe it?
think some of them do, but I feel like, and I there were the
I think
one guy at
everybody
least,
does.
he's
I think
like, it's
everybody's the
not
hero.
gonna, this is not a long-term strategy because we've created such an inequality that it's gonna reach a point where they come and take it all back.
What I'm saying, Tucker, is the propaganda works at the elite level as well. So they
No,
can
that's true.
propagandize
Yeah.
each other to
That's true.
justify having. Look, I have a 100-foot yacht. You're going to have a 300-foot yacht, and then this guy's going to need a 450-foot yacht, etc. And there's going to be a reason that why they're going to pay this money to make these billion-dollar yachts, and it's not anything you or I could ever figure out. It's insane, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the ideas of doing certain things are so cockamamie, like building
Mm.
aircraft carriers and having megaton warheads. It's just like so insane.
Yeah.
It's so crazy town. You have to dysregulate all the common sense shit and logic, I think, from where you have to get to justify these behaviors. And it takes literally like multiple world wars and multiple administrations that have maybe done something for the right reason. I don't know. Maybe sometimes there have been people that are going in, and really for the right reason. They're trying to do what John says, which is, hey, man, we could share this thing and everybody could really have a good time. Maybe some people are. I don't know. I think the preponderance is this ability to manipulate through politics, economics. And that is just too enticing for anybody to resist, really, who's going to fight their way into this club.
This is a
Yeah,
good time to throw in this quote here I saw this week. Napoleon Hill. I had not heard of this guy. He's an American author and con artist, according to Google. I didn't look into him more, but he said this thing. I think it's real appropriate. He said, if you do not conquer self, you will be conquered by self.
agree.
Agree. Yeah, you have to be aware that the game is played. If you're not playing
Hmm.
the game, if you don't know the game is being played, you are being played.
Yeah, yeah. And then
Oh, and it
and then
goes
this is
to the
interesting
whole
too.
Twitter thing. Like the fact that people are paying money to Elon Musk to be his product. Like if you're on social media, you are the product. The social media isn't the product. You are the product.
Yeah.
You don't pay to be the product. You should never pay to be the product. If you're the
Yeah, it's
product,
interesting
you
thinking.
are the one who has value. And it kills me that these people are doing this, and I'm like, it's
Devil's
insane to
advocate.
me.
I'm going to throw something out here. Devil's advocate. Apple seems to have a pay-to-play model that really encompasses like personal security and privacy, etc. I think there are models that you could put in the market that do differentiate themselves from a free Facebook style, where obviously you are the advertising revenue, you are the thing in Facebook and Instagram and all the rest. But that doesn't mean you can't have a model that is, a premium something like, Apple iTunes or something, or Prime,
Yeah.
Amazon Prime. Like Amazon Prime, man, you got to pay for something. It's not free. It's not the same thing as it's apples and oranges. Obviously, it's not a social media, but there are things that you could. I guess it'd be more like, what's the function of social media? Like, would you be paying to essentially post comments on the internet? I mean, I think that's what Twitter is, right? It's like posting
Yeah,
comments on the internet, I guess.
yeah.
So, I mean, I guess if there's a reason for it, but you're right. You are gaining revenue off of the eyeballs as it already stands. That's kind of the model, is a revenue based off of advertising. So I don't know.
Well, I remember because I read something, this was probably years ago, but it kind of gave me a new perspective on Twitter. It was something about for like neighborhood alerts, or maybe it was at a bigger level, but it was just highlighting how powerful Twitter was to notify people in a certain area like real time, whereas prior to that the best was on the news. Well, if you weren't watching the news, how would you know? Or like, there's like emergency broadcast system, I guess that, but same thing. You have to be like near a radio, and it. I wish I could remember more detail about it, but I remember thinking I wasn't thinking about Twitter that way at all, and now like, okay, so there is like some utility here beyond just the comments. Plus, for
And
me,
that
like with Facebook, I don't use Facebook myself so much, but and Bob, you and I just talked about this recently. Like, I there's a utility I have for my own life of documenting things because I think it's fascinating, but also like I know my memory's not great, and also I know there's Alzheimer's in my family, and like one day I really think it would be it'll come in really handy. Like Kim and I sort of laugh about it even sometimes. Like, look, I can go back to these pictures I took or these notes I made, and like I don't have to rely on my memory. Like, this is what I said at the time. This is what I thought. This is what was going on.
But I think the
And so
act of
anyway, I
doing
think
it,
I think people get that out of Facebook. I don't myself, but I think that's one of the utilities of like Facebook and stuff is documenting. And then it has the thing built in there, like here's a memory from 7 years ago, and like um part of that is the dopamine thing. It's the nostalgia. Nostalgia is like super powerful, right? So it I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think there's power there that we should be responsible with, we as humans, including the people like Mark Zuckerberg or anybody that the guy that invented infinite scroll, in that social dilemma documentary. He goes, didn't he kind of regretted it or something, if I
he did.
remember
oh
right. He
yeah,
was kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he did.
oh man, that was maybe not, but
Oops.
I don't
Oopsie.
yeah. I
Oopsie. I
don't want
doomed
to
the whole
be
human race. Yeah. Oopsie.
but I'm very hesitant to go like doom and gloom with that. I think he didn't. I really, man, I wish I could
Well, back
remember
back to the
exactly, but
back
I
to the
don't think
Twitter
he
thing.
did it maliciously. I think he did it because it was awesome. It was like,
No, it was
I'm gonna
awesome, dude.
build, like, yeah, I'm
It
gonna
was a
build
new
this
thing.
thing.
Yeah. But what
Yeah.
I'm getting at, what I'm saying is the Twitter thing. Go back to like MySpace. Okay, MySpace,
Mm,
like it was so hot until it got dropped. Like the
hmm.
the amount of early adoption that just doesn't work out. I mean, so much stuff churns out, and what I'm saying is, if you plot like a linear course of like all these things fixed in time, out projected 10 years from now, I'm just saying there's so much destruction and creativity in this environment that
Hmm.
it doesn't take much to destabilize or dethrone a platform when there's something like AI that comes up. And I think that's really the key. Is it takes like the guy who does infinite scroll. I mean, that's going to be equivalent to the large language models. There's going to be some kind of major impact of these texts. That's going to be, you can't tell what the next step is.
Yeah.
That is the hard part because Twitter was, from my understanding, I've never had an account and I won't at this point, but it was a very useful tool to the general population in times of conflict where they could communicate to each other in real time what the invaders were doing, what their government was doing.
Yeah.
And it was a very useful tool for that. We never, as Americans, used it for that. It was just a soapbox of, look at me. But now the problem is, who funded this buyout of Twitter? Well, the Saudis did, the Chinese did. I'm not sure if the Russians did, but it's being funded by governments who want to take that ability away from the population so that they can oppress without having that communication of how people are being oppressed. They're taking away people's ability to let everybody else know what's happening in real time. Now, that's a horrible thing, but it's also, I think we're seeing not a business model that's going to lead to a long-term Twitter. Twitter's going to collapse at one point because You've taken the useful function away, and all you're left with is this soapbox for people to scream their idea out into the world. And yeah,
and part of it
that's
is
a
like trying to
dopamine hit.
monetize it.
Yeah, that's a dopamine hit, but it's not a. It's no longer a tool. You've taken the usefulness away, and eventually, it just becomes a fad, and it goes away.
I see
Yeah,
it as squeezing a water balloon. You're going to squeeze one area and it bulges in another. I mean, it's just a never-ending battle of trying to adapt to what the humans are desirous of, and that's this information that you're talking about. This is what the key is. Everybody wants to play in this information superhighway, and it's so fabulous to the human condition to have knowledge from around the world and instantaneous and local and all the. I mean, it's so intoxicating. It's so overwhelming. It's so powerful. And now to add like an IQ, like a 95 or 90 IQ AI chatbot that's going to just. I mean, what about generating photorealistic movies? What about I mean, it's going to play on the human condition so powerfully. I don't think we're really braced for impact yet on
No,
what
because
what the humans are going to have to do to guard against exploitation, either conscious or unintendedly. Unintended consequences is really what I'm most afraid of.
Well, okay, here's an example. We have the internet now. We have basically the combined human knowledge
everywhere in your pocket.
Yeah.
And part of you goes, well, we should be smarter than we've ever been. Well, the flip side of that is we also have more flat earthers now than we've ever had, because
That's funny.
despite having the combined human knowledge in their pocket, you also have the combined ignorance in your pocket of the entire human race, and that can be, you know, what do they say? A lie travels around the world 3 times before the truth even gets its shoes on.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's
Jonathan Swift. It's a quote. Jonathan Swift. He said, "Falsehood flies, and the truth comes limping after it."
exactly.
exactly, and that's where people, we're not teaching. I'm gonna go back to
Responsible
my
Googling,
boy
like,
Sagan
yeah,
here. We're not
yeah,
developing people's bullshit detectors as
yeah,
part of a responsible society. We're just
right.
not. We're not developing critical thinking skills, and I would say it's
Deliberate in many senses. Our educations are being steered more towards creating a unquestioning serving class, you know? And Las Vegas is a perfect example. Their school system is atrocious. And why? Because they don't need smart people. They need people to run casino tables and to cook and to be hotel maids. They don't need a bunch of geniuses. They need just a group of people who will
Well,
do what they were
Tucker,
told for what they are paid.
let me ask you. Let me ask you. You say they need, okay? They need these things. So, do you feel like these global decisions are orchestrated, or they're emergent based on some emergent phenomenon, or do you think it's like planned and they are doing it?
Uh, I think it's probably a combination of both. You know, I look at politicians, for instance, and certainly there are some who are willfully malicious. But then I think there's some who think they're doing the right thing, even while looking at the results and seeing that it's not working and seeing that it's not bettering humanity. And that's just who they are. You know,
Hmm.
they think I can go. You can continue as a civilization the way we're heading, and well, many of them just think God will make everything okay, and that's despite all the evidence that God is not making everything okay, and that it's our responsibility to make things okay.
Yeah,
They just carry on. That's they don't question it, and I think you have to question. Like for me, in my 20s, I came across the revelation or the uh, just the idea that having a set of beliefs is a hindrance. Like, your beliefs should not be set. They should be constantly fluid and
Fluid.
adapting to
Yeah.
new information. If your
Yeah.
beliefs are set, then you have stopped being a conscious individual. You're just an NPC. Like, you have to be able to react to new information and new ideas, and your beliefs have to stand up to scrutiny. And once that, it's science. Once your belief has been disproven, you gotta fucking move on. Like, you've gotta
Yeah.
adapt to the new
But what if
information.
I said that most people perhaps are making decisions not based on an understanding, but on corollary knowledge of if this, then that. So after it, then because of it. And that they're going to then justify, no matter how difficult the narration is, how twisted and convoluted the story must be to justify that thing. That's what they're going to do. It's going to be God. Whatever you got to come up with to back into the solution of this thing is going to happen if I do that. And your body's going to tell you, if you do this thing, you will get this amazing reward. And you'll have this feeling of like, I got to do this thing. Now, why do I have to do this thing? And what I'm getting at is the structure of the system is going to induce behavior to maximize for this truism. Okay, if we do not change the rule set, there's no way to motivate people that's going to be any different than personal gain maximized for, political power. I mean, that's just a forever exchange. You cannot do away with that. It is always going to exist. So the only solution then is to remove at some point at a systematic level this influence of individuals over, decisions that will allow for massive personal gain or sharing of personal wealth or something. I mean, there's going to have to be a rule set level that I think is going to be a game changer.
Absolutely. And
Probably
I
has
think,
something to do with AI. I
yeah,
think that's going to be a big
Interesting.
factor.
because
I wrote.
to me, the perfect place to roll out AI is going to be at the top. Your
At the top, you
CEOs,
said?
your CEOs, you're already training psychotic individuals to make huge decisions that influence hundreds of thousands of people, up to millions of people, based on their gut, on what they think
Mm.
is going to be best. Well, you know what? That they're constantly going to be influenced by their reward. How much am I going to get out of this decision? Take that out. Have an AI look at it and go, what's the best solution here?
Yeah, right.
How do I steer
Interesting.
this problem based on all the factors without
I
being
like it.
influenced by what my
There's
reward is?
there's one
Yeah,
problem here. I like it a lot. There's one problem, which is the AI is going to base its prediction off of past results.
and
True.
prompts, right? I mean, that's why
True.
prompt engineering is like, I don't know how like much you guys see about that, but in the way
No,
that
you're
I
right.
think,
Prompt engineering.
in
You're right. Asking the right
yeah,
questions. Yeah.
yeah, because in the way that I feel like I can sort of look back in time or whatever, and like the power of Google happened, and maybe as a failing of society, I don't think we taught children how to use it responsibly. Like responsible Googling should be taught in schools. You know what I mean?
That's
Like
very,
being
very
aware of like
insightful. Yeah.
confirmation bias and like just because, it's and so anyway, my point is like with Chat GPT, like my experience anyways, working in IT, yeah, prompt engineering is like at the forefront. I mean, people are talking about how important it is. So I think that's a good thing. Now, maybe that was happening in IT when Google, because I mean, I was still in IT at that time, but I just feel like I'm seeing it happen with prompt engineering, and it's very encouraging. And so I just think like that has got to be a big key. It's almost like almost like driving. You know, we agreed as a society that you need a license in order to drive. I don't necessarily, I'm not saying that like a person needs a license to use ChatGPT. I think it's real important to consider something like that though, instead of just unleashing it in the wild, you know, of like recognize how powerful this thing is and how important the responsibility is of wielding that power, you know, because I think that didn't quite happen with Google. Uh, you know, how many people we all talk to, I'm sure that, you know, well, Google said this. Well, what did you look for? I looked, you know, I said, is the earth flat? And I got all these responses that are like, yeah, the earth is flat. Look, I used Google.
There's
Dude,
a
I love.
whole
I don't know if you
there's
guys
a
have
whole
seen the.
group around the globe that will tell you all
I know.
about the earth being flat.
Yeah, right, right.
Have you ever seen the meme where it's, I can't remember what Marvel comic book guy it is. It's like the blue powerful guy, and there's like some little tiny human cowering in the corner, and the human, it says, "What is your source?" And the big giant guy says, "I made it up." You know, it's like, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's like, yeah, sources go out the window. I Google it. It's just a universal source. You know, what does
Yeah,
that mean? I mean, I think there's tons of problematic, exploitation of this tech that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface on. And it's going to be
yeah.
real quick anecdote. My kids were at a Halloween party last night. When I went to go pick them up, I go into the house and there's a bunch of middle-aged people in the kitchen because it's cold out in the kitchen talking. Then I go into the bedroom and there's three teenagers and they're all watching. Well, there's a TV on in the room, but they're all laying on the couch, separate areas, all on their phones or devices. Nobody looks up. No one's looking at each other. Nobody's speaking. And I'm asking, like,
Crazy.
where are the little kids? The kids that don't have phones yet. And they're like, they're down the hall. And so then I go down the hall, and all the little kids that don't have devices, they're playing, they're romping, jumping on the bed, whatever,
Yeah.
playing, little games and stuff, because none of them have phones yet. Dude, as soon as we get a generation or two deep of people who are brought up with the screen
With
time,
phones. Yeah.
yeah, man, it's gonna be. I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gonna be scary business.
What do you know what they were doing on their phones? Because I feel like that's an important part in my belief of what I want
Here's
to
what they
think
weren't
about
doing,
it.
John. Here's what they weren't doing. They weren't socializing. They were individually immersed in their own little universe in a group. That's my point. So my point isn't that the tool has no function. My point is the socialization is not there. And this individualized persona of I don't need anybody. I can just consume everything in one packet. It's all condensed just how I like it. Everything is customized to me. The
Hmm.
algorithm knows what I like. It's all going to be curated according to my desires. And if I look at my phone, nobody touches it. I put it just how I like it. I get to control it. Nothing
Yeah.
bothers me when I'm on my phone. It's pure dopamine. It's all good. Dude, there's three boys or three girls or whatever, these kids that could have been playing a game. It's Halloween at a party. And they're all sitting on their fucking phones, dude. And so I'm saying there's like
You know, I don't disagree with you. I want to throw this out again, sort of devil's advocate or whatever, but like you could probably appreciate a possible scenario, right? Like where they actually were socializing, they were playing some game together. Like here's a game that I played that Kim and I have played a couple times, and again, you know, a lot of this is like just silly nonsense stuff, but we have sat together on the patio and decided like we weren't going to speak to each other. We were going to communicate only through gifs. We were going to send each other gifts and try to have a conversation without speaking. And that was really fucking fun.
That's
I mean,
brilliant.
I
Yeah,
was
I think
laughing
that's
a lot.
brilliant. I think that's brilliant, but I think that what we're talking about is the followers. So there's map makers, map readers, and there's followers and
Yeah.
brokers. What I'm talking about is as you have a holistic team approach, nobody's better than the other. Everybody's randomly just scattered. And by the way, it switches. So maybe you're a fucking doctor, okay, but you're on an airplane. So now you're sitting in the back because the pilot's the boss, right? But then if the pilot gets sick, is there a doctor in here, right? Now the doctor comes. So it's all relative, man. Who's like
Hmm.
leading whom? And the shit changes really rapidly. There's not a one size fits all. So yes, you could have three geniuses on their phone making up a new language in real time and not using words. I get it. I get it. I just think it's such a trap to
Yeah.
dissociate humans from the reality of human cohabitation. There's a reality to being touched. There's a reality to seeing a
Yeah.
face. There's a reality to hearing a voice. There's a reality to like being an animal is what I'm getting at. And when you get too far removed from animal, what you get, John, is consciousness. And this consciousness, in my view, unopposed by a subconscious righteousness of programming, this is what you should be doing. Like if you could instill the subconscious push that guides you in the right way, the consciousness, I think, is going to follow along and be happy. But if you don't have that, and the consciousness is really just all in charge and making all the decisions and all maximizing for self consumption, you end up with nothing but consuming the trees and nobody's planting the trees. And what I'm saying is
Yeah.
the society where the old people are planting trees is the best society you could possibly imagine. The society where everybody's eating the trees as fast as humanly possible is the nightmare that we are faced with.
Yeah.
Well, okay, even go back to like Demon Haunted World, the Carl Sagan quote of, I envision a future America where everyone's a consumer. And he nailed it. But he didn't have all the information. We are a nation of consumers, but we're consuming content.
Yeah.
And he didn't see that coming. I don't think
No,
anybody in that time did. He was
Decoupling
looking
from
at it.
reality, you can make as much content. You can make infinite
Yeah,
content. It's not coupled to
exactly.
reality. I like it. That's a very good point. It's like go
Yeah.
back to the
And
fiat dollar. It's like when the dollar is removed from anything at all that's real, it can be
then it's no longer
exploited.
real.
Yeah, it's a really great metaphor. I like that.
I'm just
Yeah.
do a time check here, you guys. Like it has been over an hour now. We probably could like talk forever, but I feel like we probably should try to like wrap up.
Yeah.
I want to mention this other thing that was in the free will article. There was a link to a Ted Chiang. Do you know who Ted Chiang is?
Name
I
drop.
do not recall.
Chiang. Hold on, let me take my headphones out. Hold on. You guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. He wrote a short story, or I think it's maybe even just a novel. I don't know, but it's I think it's called like Stories of Your Life or This Is Your Life, and then it's became the movie Arrival. Have you guys seen that?
No,
It
it's on my
sounds more
list. I
familiar
need
now.
to.
It's great. It's a great movie. Well, anyway, I don't know about the story, but it's unique. And anyway, so in this article on
Yes,
free
I
will,
remember it. I remember it now. Sorry, John. I remember it now. Yes, the arrival with the languages. Yes, exactly. I remember it now. Yeah.
it's great. It's really is
Yeah, it's a
like
great movie. I remember that now.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but he wrote this other short story called "What's Expected of Us," and it's linked to in that we don't have free will article, and it's pretty dark because it's I would encourage you to read it. I'm not really too scared about spoiling it so much, but it's about the subconscious conscious thing and people kind of recognizing that their subconscious is in control and they don't have free will, and they end up kind of going catatonic, and it's really gnarly how he wraps it all up towards the end. The last line is brilliant, so I highly recommend checking that out. I'll put a link in the show as well, but. That I've been wanting to dive into some Ted Chiang stuff, and after I saw that or read that short story, I was like, yeah. I mean, and it is short. It's 7 paragraphs or something. So
I'll
anyway,
check it out. I remember he was interviewed by somebody. I remember him being interviewed. He was fascinating. I can't remember the whole thing now, but I remember the guy who wrote Arrival and all
yeah,
that. He was talking about. Yeah, very cool stuff. I'll definitely check that out.
yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, I think we could probably wrap up. Any other closing thoughts? In the agenda we didn't even get to like game theory and assembly theory. I kind of didn't think we would. I figured we would have plenty to talk about with just those 2 articles. So, future episode for sure. And obviously we've chatted about this. We're going to do an episode on contact. I can't wait. I mean, there's so much like Carl Sagan stuff. Anyway, so hopefully soon-ish, maybe in the next week or two. I read so slow. I really want to finish the book and then rewatch the movie and everything. But I can't wait to dive into that with you guys. I think it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, that's one I listened to the book, but I really think I'm gonna go get a paper copy and go through it where I can highlight stuff.
Yeah,
And there's
that's the
so
that's the
many cool just phrases and
exactly the ultimate irony. I know I don't mind saying this now. I know we'll say it again, but just the irony of that line about they should have sent a poet, because they're so, that's the character, that's Jodie Foster's character saying that in the movie. I think I just read the line in the book. It's in a different part in the story, but just the irony that like there's so much poetry in the book and the movie, just it's beautiful. And so yeah, you said highlighting, like, so I have the Kindle version, and that's what I've been doing. And I noticed, I haven't done it yet. I've had a Kindle for like 10 years, and I've highlighted stuff, but never done anything with it. I noticed there's like an export option, so I don't know what that's like,
ooh,
but that's going to
nice.
be like, I think that's going to work really nice. I could hopefully just copy and paste it into the agenda, not have to like type stuff. How convenient is that? But yeah. So I know that, we'll be doing that soon. Hopefully it'll, can't wait. So
I love
Yeah,
it.
because going back to kind of what we were talking about earlier with the asteroid or whatever, I'm sure Sagan wasn't the first one to put it out there, but I think he really fleshed out like realistically how that looks in that kind of situation where it's like, yes, the whole world is disarming. We're working towards this common goal, but we're still humans and we're still beholden to our country and our ideals. So
yeah,
we're all working towards this, but we're still going to build three separate ones
But
because
yeah,
but think
we're
think about
humans
this
and
though. Think about
yeah,
this though. It's not. Sagan's is about beauty, meaning the metaphor isn't that the asteroid is going to kill us all. It's that we unify
true.
based off of this global problem that puts us in a relatively different position, but it's not dangerous. I mean, it's really beautiful in that the
mm,
concept of other intelligent life in this universe. I mean, it's just such a fascinating, like, if then. So if that is
yeah,
true, then what? I mean, it
yeah,
resets the game, man. It's such a
yeah,
beautiful way he goes back to the poetry.
yeah,
He's expressing such a poetic concept. It's romantic and it's idealistic, but it's
yeah,
a solution in that, in game theory. If we wanted to uh, have an emergent reaction of everybody turning their swords into plowshares, right? We want to get rid of the weapon, make it productive. We could do so much more collectively as if we're all on the same team, even if we disagree, than us opposing each other. It's preposterous, obviously. But what
mm,
my point is, to get that behavior, you can't force it. Like I'm gonna threaten you to do what I say now. Like I want you to be at peace. I mean, if you don't be peaceful, I'm gonna kill you. Like
Yeah.
it's a really hard concept. Like how do
yeah,
you make resolution? And my point is the solution of making the rule set the game theoretic optimal behavior to be the good behavior. That's the key, I think, is such that when someone is using their subconscious to find out what is in their strategic best interest, that it really is to do the right thing. Like that's the solution, is making the rule set such that the emergent behavior is both self-interested and group interested at the same time.
mm,
You know,
yeah,
and we can discuss this more in the contact episode, but to me, there's a duality of man where technologically we have developed through hate, through war,
mm,
and
yeah,
through economic strife. That's how we have developed the tech that we have. But culturally, we develop through love,
mm,
art,
I like that.
music, social programs.
How
How
about beauty?
how do
Beauty.
we as a species
Yeah,
take away our technological development from the hatred? How do we develop our tech out of love instead of destruction?
yeah,
And we haven't gotten there yet.
yeah.
That's the right question, though. I agree.
Yeah, that's a good thing to end on. It's good. It's gonna give me stuff to ponder on now. Haikus to write, you know.
Exactly, exactly.
Good deal.
That's the whole point. This is the cycle: is you think about it, and then your subconscious crunches it and gives you art,
Right.
and you see it, and then you try to interpret. What did I just make up? This is the beauty of the whole thing of the metaphor is the compression and encryption. You don't even know what you're creating sometimes. You're just
Right.
given the gift of a symbol, and then you get to interpret it. And then other people get to interpret it, and then they get to figure out something you didn't even mean when you created the code,
Right.
right? And
Yes. Right. And then yeah, that awe thing comes in. And I don't
it
think the
becomes
word is
alive.
numinism. I can't remember what the word is when we do that. And I'm but it's something about that newness and the novelty piece. There's a word for it. But yeah, it's awesome. Just beautiful shit. Cool. All right. Well, yeah. I think yeah. Any other final parting words here before we wrap up?
No, I'm just gonna stay silent, or we'll be here another hour.
All right.
Ditto right here, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and we'll catch everybody next time.
Sounds good.
Peace out.